This past Monday morning, as I often like to be on Monday mornings, I was on the golf course. And it was a beautiful morning, if you may remember, before the storm started to come in that day, before it rained. And I was golfing by myself, which I like to do from time to time, because it's different than when you're golfing with other people, because then it's more of a social atmosphere, and you're talking and you're just kind of enjoying the moment. But when you're golfing by yourself, at least for me, I take the game pretty seriously. And for me, in order to play pretty well, and by pretty well, I mean bad. But one of the things I love about playing by myself and kind of really working at, focusing on getting this little white ball into this little hole in the ground is that it forces me to really shut things out of my mind, to quiet my mind, my soul for a few hours. Because in order to play the game well, I need to quiet all those voices, all those concerns, all those burdens that I carry, all the noise. And if I don't do that, I can play really, really bad. And I remember I was on the 6th hole at the Viroqua Golf Course Monday morning. And I had not been playing all that well for a little while. And I had teed off the tee box on the 6th hole, and it was an awful looking golf shot. I mean, it was 20 yards, just kind of this way. And I knew exactly why I was playing so bad, because in the middle of my backswing, instead of concentrating on what I was doing, I was replaying a conversation that was in my head from the week. And I got really frustrated. And I actually said the person's name out loud. Okay, it wasn't Kyle, okay? But I'm going to use you as an example. It wasn't you, trust me, okay? And I said, Kyle, get out of my head. Okay, it wasn't you, right? Okay. But I just had to almost jar myself because it kept replaying, and I couldn't quiet my mind and my soul. And it seemed to work a little bit, because for the rest of the round, at least until the storm started to come in, I had to leave. I was playing better. I seemed to find that focus that had eluded me, but it still was a struggle, because the noise of my life and the concerns of the day kept wanting to creep back into my swing. And this psalm that is in front of us, this refrain that comes up a couple times here in Psalm 42, really resonates with me this week. O my soul, why are you disquieted within me? And this past week, our souls have had much to be disquieted about. Last Sunday morning, we woke up to the news of the worst mass shooting in the history of our country. And on top of the tragedy of 49 lives being lost in a senseless act of violence, along with an equal number being injured, some very severely, along with all the trauma that surrounded everyone who was in that place that evening and all of their families and that entire community, actually. It has also brought to the surface again our polarized political and social arguments around terror, around immigration, around gun control, around hate crimes, around equal rights for our LGBT community, and all of those things that fill our airwaves and our news and our discourse. And being in the midst of a presidential election, it only gets ratcheted up all that much more. And so the lament and the words of the psalmist in Psalm 42 echo the journey of our souls, at least mine, this past week. And this psalmist here in Psalm 42 is really I think it's really a journey that we are led on through these words, through these paragraphs. A journey that in the opening words, a journey that begins in longing for the refreshing water and hope of the living God. It moves on to describe a journey that remembers days and times that were more joyful. So the psalmist in the midst of this must be in a time in life that is difficult, that is a struggle, that is feeling either forced away or somewhat isolated. It continues with a journey that openly wonders why is one soul troubled, and even moves to the questioning of God's presence in life. It is a journey that finally then even goes to a place of despair, but still finds and knows that in the midst of that disquieted soul, that true hope only comes from God. And that refrain is in that psalm twice. He keeps coming back to it. And it even shows up again in Psalm 43, the next one. What I love about this psalm is that it reminds me that to hope in God as a person of faith, justified by the grace made real in Jesus, that to hope in God means that we know and articulate hope and despair simultaneously. That they are both part of our life and part of our daily journey. We cannot escape this reality, and the fact that it's even demonstrated by Jesus himself. He echoes the refrain of this psalm in his prayer while he's looking ahead to his journey to the cross. It takes place in Matthew 25. He speaks of his own troubled soul in John chapter 12, and his words echo the refrain of this psalm. Even Jesus could not escape the disquietude of the soul, and neither can we. But the good news that the psalmist again continues to lift up as well is that neither can we escape the disquietness of soul, but also we can't escape the steadfast love and faithfulness of God, and that God's desire to lead us back to the flowing streams of living water and the hope that it brings. And so we live simultaneously in that reality, in that promise. And so when the psalmist writes, "O my soul, why are you disquieted within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my help and my God." In that light, what are we to do this week in the midst of all of the disquietness of our souls? Whether it's things that are in our own personal lives, whether it's in the aftermath and the terrible loss of life and the surrounding, never-ending discourse of terror, hate, guns, lifestyle, everything. So a few things I think we can do in the reflection of this psalm. First, remember the journey that this psalmist makes. And know that you're not alone in this trek of a disquieted soul. Not only are there others that we gather with here this morning, not only are there others who gather in faith in places of worship around our country and globe this weekend, but even from the first days of our faith, going back to the beginning of which when people would write down and reflect with one another upon the promises and the commitment of God. Even the psalmist himself, even Jesus himself, cried out, "O my soul." And remember that the lament of life is always just a breath away from the hope of life. And sometimes they're so intermixed you can hardly even know when you're going from one to the other. Remember that the flowing stream flows through parched lands and deserts of our lives. It's like when I'm sitting there with someone in a hospital room in the midst of, let's say, a cancer treatment that has just ravaged their body. And it's despair. But almost always alongside with that is a word of hope that says, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I know I'm in God's hands, and that others around me are as well. That's that simultaneous walking. Second thing I think we can do, turn off the news from time to time. Take an intentional step to tune out the noise that just overwhelms us. Like me standing on that tee box on the 6th hole and proclaiming, "Get out of my head." Whatever it is you have to do, take an intentional step that allows your soul to quiet down, that removes you for a while from whatever it is that is causing you grief. And when it comes to, things in our national conversation, of course, stay engaged. Of course, stay informed. But don't let the endless commentary and the breaking news bulletins constantly invade your space. And third, remember the refrain of this psalm. If there is no other words of the psalm that you take home with you, take home the refrain. And in the midst of the question, "Oh, my soul, why are you disquieted within me?" remember the immediate answer. "Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my help and my God." This means that even as it's hard sometimes, even when it's difficult, and even when everything is pressuring you to do the opposite, don't give in. Don't give in to hate and fear. Don't run away in frustration. Don't separate yourself and build up walls around yourself that keeps you from being engaged with one another. Because proclaiming the hope of Christ means that we have to take a risk with one another. And not only a risk with those we know and those we love, but also a risk with those that we don't know, and those who come to us from far away, and those whom we've never seen before. Because proclaiming Christ and the hope that Christ brings and makes real in our world is never the easy journey. It's never the path of least resistance. But it is a path that brings us peace and wholeness. And if we can be a voice of peace, of moderation, of love in a world that seems to be increasingly angry at each other, down the road, maybe the events of this past weekend become a rarity. In this journey of despair and hope, my friends, know that you are never alone. Other people of faith walk with you. Christ walks with you. All of the saints, all of the forebears of our faith walk with you. God will continue to surround you with hope, with possibility, with love, with adventure. No single act of terror, no single act of hate, no single difficult conversation or reality in your life can ever take that promise away. Walk confidently in God's love. Thanks be to